Hi guys, Tugu here with a new video, and this video will be a updated Soul Shuffle tier list video for Season 3 of Dragonflight. I was waiting for a balance change patch, but it seems like they are not going to do that. It seems like way too late for 10.2.5 to even have like some significant patch, balance patch. So I guess they're waiting maybe for the week before AWC. We will see. But right now, I'm going to update the guide, like the tier list, because I feel like a lot of things has moved, at least in my eyes. And since I played a lot of specs also in between, I feel like I can actually give you a update on my solo shuffle tier list. This one was the tier list from 2 weeks ago, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I think there's a lot of changes. I'm going to go through every single spec that has a change in my eyes, and I'm going to talk about it a bit more in depth. But this will be like always a bit long of a video, but I try to be concise, but I'd like to explain why I put certain specs to certain places. Now, let's start from the bottom. Has Augmentation Evoker or Frost Decay changed my mind on a few things? Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like Frost Decay are on the same level as Augmentation Evoker being that bad. Augmentation Evoker feels really bad. Playing with one feels like horrible, and you kind of have to rely on the healers doing a mistake, or playing versus the Augmentation Evoker and you don't respect something, for example Sleepwalk, or anyways like a CC chain on your healer. But I do feel like Frost Decay has a bit more tools. I'm not going to say like it's crazy, because it does feel still underwhelming, but I'm going to put them at C tier, just to have like some separation between Augmentation Evoker and Frost Decay. Preservation Evoker feels horrible in Soul Shuffle, I'm going to say, because of how the throughput is very low. The issue is everything is on a CD from all the things that actually matters, healing wise, like Spirit Bloom, Dream Breath. You have your Verdant Embrace, and you have to use it on like a right sequence. And if you're not doing it because you panicked, you often just lose the match because of that. You're also highly switchable. It's so easy to just like go for Preservation Evoker at one point in the match. You have some things that are like okay, but since now we know how Emerald Communion works, and Preservation Evoker gets low at one point, and you have another target that is also very low, the Emerald Communion will heal first the Preservation Evoker and then the other target. So you have a lot of time to actually just switch out on the target and kind of just ruin the Emerald Communion. Also, Cyclone is one of the biggest offender for Preservation Evoker. The good thing is about Preservation Evoker is you can play very aggressive, and you can win sometimes versus those passive healers. Like for example, I would not say the Resto Druid is passive in my eyes, but versus a Resto Druid, you can actually dispel those hearts, and if it's timed correctly, you could actually win those matches. But it feels really horrible to win those matches, because of like you have to play like a DPS. If you're playing like a healer, you're not going to do anything on Preservation Evoker. And I also just see way less Preservation Evokers these days, and before it was actually something that was somewhat popular, although the model is not that really great. I do feel like the gameplay is fun. It just is too relying on CDs, and it feels like, again, time dilation is good, but if you're relying on one CD to kind of heal and to kind of survive, it feels really tough. So I'm going to put them as the lowest healer in my opinion. Holy Priest got a resurgence with the Forset. I'm going to say the Forset kind of helps them a bit, but it's still quite fast. They have some CC, that's great, but they don't have really great damage reduction on your allies. So if you're trying to heal and at one point you have dampening, you don't have ways to cheat out the game, I would say. Like for example, Disc Priest can do, or the Holy Priest can do, Holy Paladin can do on a Bob, for example, or Resto Druid can actually just heal a lot, like all the time. It feels really tough to actually like be the center focused healer in those matches, where you can actually decide the outcome because of a damage reduction ability, but Holy Priest doesn't really have that. Void Shift is always going to be nice, but again, if I'm basing on that fact, I think Disc Priest is just way better than Holy Priest. and if, for now they kind of need like something. I would say they need an extra PvP talent, or they need like something that is reworked for PvP to have somewhat of a damage reduction ability that is going to be reliable. The throughput is good, but again, with dampening in game, it's very hard to justify a Holy Priest these days. You can still climb as one, but it feels really horrible to play as one. Shadow Priest. So I have been playing a lot of Shadow Priest these days. I will be making a opinion video very soon about it. I was first thrilled about it because I found it very fun to play with the Forset and Catharsis. So your damage is quite good, like instant, but it feels bad because you have to sacrifice your HP because they need to go for you. You have to sacrifice your HP, and I also rely too hard on a healer. Does it change the fact that where I put them on the tier list? I don't think so. I feel like they're still very C tier. I think they're very relying on their allies to do good, to be able to do good. You're not going to solo carry a match alone because your defensives are either taking you out of the game, for example, dispersion. Either you have to void shift, so you have to react very well. You also have to play like a literal god because you have to keybind every single ability to be like every single macro to be able to compete with someone that has a lot less macros and a lot of things that they don't need to think about. Again, if you're a Shadow Priest, you need a party 1, party 2 void shift. You kind of need to have also your silence, your stun, both of them on all the enemy party frames. So you have to have a focus one, you have to have target 1, target 2 pretty much. It's very hard to compete as a Shadow Priest compared to other specs. I know that if you train enough on Shadow Priest, you can actually climb. It's not like it's impossible to climb. I think in threes you can also show with a good comp that Shadow Priest has potential, but again, it relies on your allies to know what's up with a Shadow Priest and not have a resto druid going for a stun rake, like a rake stun into a cyclone, while you are getting like manhandled by 2 melees. And then you have to disperse like first global. That's stupid. But some healers don't know how what's up with the game or what's up with the Shadow Priest until they themselves play Shadow Priest. And just for that thing, it's very hard to put them higher than that because yes, they have potential. Yes, they have CC. Yes, they can have damage if they're going for him and you're playing around Catharsis and your Forset. It can do some surprising damage, but it feels like you're playing around the cheese mechanic with the Forset and with Shadow Word Death. Basically with Shadow Word Death getting you Forset procs, but also having your Shadow Word Pain for your Catharsis and that activation of those procs. It feels really bad. So they kind of need a rework. It's very hard to have that because it feels like every single season needs a rework of a Shadow Priest because they don't know what they want to do with them. I think having Door of Shadows from Shadowlands onto the Shadow Priest kit, or even any priest for that matter, I think that would be a big step in the right direction because it feels like if I take every single spec, it feels like Shadow Priest is the least mobile spec in the game by a huge margin. I would even say that DKs are more mobile than Shadow Priest just because they have also displacement, which is quite big. Again, gripping someone into you is for me also some kind of mobility. Shadow Priest has none of that except for their allies. But again, if you're playing solo shuffle, you don't have any say on how they play. So again, I think Shadow Priest, they're even going to I cannot drop them. Like, I think they are better than Holy Priest though, but they are really low in my books right now. Fire Mage. I think Fire Mage, they're sticking on C tier. I think it's too killable. They have the same issues as Shadow Priest, as the healer has to know what's up with the game or what's up with the Fire Mage. Yeah, it's tough. I do feel like in threes they're way better because of like communication and knowing when to do a go and such. You can carry games as a Fire Mage, but it feels like infinitely harder than, let's say, an Arcane Mage. Although Arcane Mage is notoriously harder to play, it does feel like you're surviving way better as an Arcane Mage than a Fire Mage. Enhancement Shaman is feeling horrible these days. I know that some people may say the contrary, but I feel like it's either a RNG mechanic where you're kind of cheese out the game, or you're playing around the elementalist build, which is also a good build. It's very strong. It's actually the meta build, but it feels like, again, you're very squishy, and the amount of damage you're doing as the elementalist build is kind of the same as other specs. It's not like you're having more damage than them. It's not like you're having like oppressive damage to the point that they have to drop from you, that they have to go away. That's not really the issue, because I feel like you're doing the similar damage as a DK, similar damage as a DH, similar damage as any hunter spec, any warrior spec actually eats you alive as well. I feel like Enhancement Shaman is in a place where they kind of need a rework as well. The issue is, in PvE they are very strong. In PvE, everyone loves Enhancement Shaman and loves to play Enhancement Shaman because it's very complicated for some reason, their rotation. I understand that because they have a lot of buttons. But in PvP, it doesn't seem to work. I think having Astra Shift maybe on the possibility to be able to use it while stunned would be already a great step in the right direction. So you can actually just not preemptively go for Astra Shift, but actually you can choose whenever you want to go for one. So you're going to hold the defensives a bit higher, I would say. I think there are a few things that they need to change. Maybe Burrow needs to be able to be casted while stunned. I don't know. There's something that they can do. I think self-healing, it's good, but you have to sacrifice damage. And if you don't want to sacrifice damage, you need to drop a PvP talent, which is going to drop some healing because it's not the same healing as, let's say, Maelstrom healing. If you're playing Enhanced Shaman, you might know again. I don't think they're very high rated, in my opinion, on the tier list. But if you want to climb with it, you can still climb with it. I just think you will have an easier time with any other spec. This is pretty much like saying to you, look, if you want to climb as an augmentation evoker, it is the hardest spec to climb with it. Not mechanically, but just like numbers wise, for example. And this is not like saying you have to quit Enhancement Shaman. It just is me saying that you climbing as an Enhancement Shaman is likely more harder than, let's say, climbing as an Arms Warrior, more harder than to climb with any other spec above Enhancement Shaman. Restoration Shaman, my opinion doesn't really change too much. I think it's very lobby dependent. I think it's very frustrating to have people walk away from your totems. Since again, Earthen Wall totem can actually like, it's not healing, but they can absorb or redirect a lot of the damage, and that can actually make up a game for you. But if people are like constantly kiting and they don't know, again, it's visually very hard, so you have to macro to make people really stay in it, or you have to displace it constantly. But again, someone that is kiting is going to kite also always away from your Earthen Wall, so it's difficult. I think the healing throughput is alright, but it's one of the lowest from any other spec. You have to play around your CDs, and once your CDs are gone, that's it. There is nothing else for you. The difference between Preservation Evoker, Holy Priest, and a Restoration Shaman is pretty much like purely Restoration Shaman has a lot of CDs to go through, so you can actually win games. So you have an interrupt on a 30-yard range, and it's a 12-second CD, so you can win a lot of those caster matchups with a grounding totem, with even double grounding totem if you're going to recall it, for example. It's very, very strong, but also weak at the same time, and that's why in threes I feel like Restoration Shaman is way better than in Soul Shuffle. But that's basically because you can actually play around comms that are actually very complementary with you, that can actually give you some time to heal and some ability to cast Healing Wave, for example. In Soul Shuffle, if you're casting Healing Wave and you're playing in a melee lobby, you're going to get like kicked, silenced, interrupted, whatever, for nothing. And it's very hard to win those games if that occurs. So for me, I'm going to stick them at B tier. I do think they're better than Fury Warrior right now. Fury Warrior, I feel like they are not good. I'm going to drop them even to C tier. I think the more we are playing the game, the more we have 4 set, the more people realize that, look, the 2 set from a Fury Warrior doesn't really add too much damage. In PvE, you can create for 300k. In PvP, it is nowhere near that amount. And again, if you're playing around that only, you're not going to win games. You can win game as a Fury Warrior, but it feels like you're going to have a harder time than, let's say, playing an Arms Warrior. Normally, you should be able to be like always on the face of someone, but it feels like you're even easier to kite than, let's say, Arms Warrior, because Arms Warrior has double Blade Storm, and that helps a lot. But Fury doesn't have that. In Shadowlands, you had like crushing blows actually charging onto the enemy. That was a bit toxic, but I feel like since you can only crushing blow once, and then you have to go back with a rampage to actually have another crushing blow, I think this is maybe the right moment to give it back to the Fury Warriors. I feel like if you're not buffing any damage, but you just give this, that could also help a lot with the uptime on, let's say, casters, which should be easier for a Fury Warrior than an Arms Warrior. But for now, it doesn't seem like it. Double Blade Storm is way too strong on Arms Warrior compared to a Fury Warrior. I play both spec. I am a main warrior, so I know what I'm talking about whenever I say that Blade Storm kinda is stronger than Fury. Just Blade Storm is stronger than Fury, not even Arms, just Blade Storm. The capacity to be able to shrug off any CC or root, or slow for that matter, is actually very, very strong. While Fury, I mean, if you have some uptime, that's very great, but often than not, if you're playing versus those specs that are very strong right now, they can just peel off like anything from you. And often than not, what you have to do as a Fury Warrior is go for the healer. But in Soul Shuffle, going for healer can sometimes mean that you're going to line your healer, which often results with you being dead in a matter of seconds. Affliction Warlock. Now, Affliction Warlock is in Soul Shuffle better than 3s, but I will not say that they are godly in Soul Shuffle. I think they are very killable, and if not killable, at least ignorable to the first minute of the game. If you just like land the interrupt on the right moment, you can actually just like avoid a lot of damage. So sometimes leaving the Affliction Warlock alone and just CCing in them is probably the best way to win the game, because if you're going for Affliction Warlock, he can just like kind of deal the same kind of damage, but he will not be free. But it's better to maybe stun and then go for the off target, which often is more killable than the Affliction Warlock, and then you can win the game because of that. Because the Affliction Warlock is going to do meaningful damage on the latter part of the game, but it feels like in early game you're not going to secure like any kills. It's pretty much you and your ally, and you're trying to do your dots, you're trying to be a nuisance with your fear spams, for example, but even those fears are getting broken by dot damage. So I'm going to put them below Restoration Shaman, but I think Restoration Shaman is just slightly better than Affliction Warlock right now. Feral Druid, I'm going to keep them at B tier. I feel like they are strong in some matchups, but in most matchups you're kind of really did kill target, and being the kill target as a Feral Druid means that your cyclones are going to be less effective, because you're going to get kicked, you're going to get stunned, micro CC'd, your damage is there, force is really awesome, and you can win games because of like a good well placed cyclone. But again, like I said, if you are the target, being able to cyclone someone is always going to be challenging. Holy Paladin, that's the one that I'm going to probably be controversial, maybe? I don't know, because I play Holy Paladin, I made a guide about it, I feel like it's very strong. I think it's stronger than Disc Priest right now, and that's going to be a spoiler. I'm going to put them at S tier. I think Holy Paladin is better than Disc Priest in most matchups because of how the meta is laying out. I already made a video about it, but for me, Windwalkers, Rogues, Arms Warrior, then you have DH, DK, and then you have like some classes which are Balanced Druid, Demonology Warlock, Destruction Warlock, all those specs, they are actually quite countered by a Holy Paladin. I'm going to explain again. As a Holy Paladin, if you're getting root beamed, you can just Judgment onto the Balanced Druid and you're going to be liberated by the root beam. Or you're going to get the damage from the spell, from let's say the astral beam or whatever. I don't know how it's called anymore. The moonfire, sunfire, then you have the third dot that is going to liberate you with the damage you're going to do. But you can liberate yourself by just doing a judgment with the PvP talent, for example. You counter unholy case with your cleanse healing, so whenever you're doing a flash of light, you can remove all the diseases, which is quite big. You have double freedom, which is big for a lot of specs. Buffs are actually like insane strong versus a lot of those meta specs. You're very killable though, but if you know how to play around, you can also bait a lot of people like into trying to kill you while you are running away. Um, the pets like Felguard and such, they get countered by buffs. So your like Bob is useless versus casters, but versus demonology warlock, it's actually quite nice. You have demon hunters that cannot go through Bobs as well, although it's chaos damage, they cannot go through. BM hunters are very popular these days. Bobs kind of ruins them. You have a lot of like the ways to heal correctly while not casting. Of course, casting is going to be important, but I do feel like right now Holy Paladin is the top 2 healer. You also see in the statistics since 2 weeks ago, Holy Paladin actually got a huge resurgence on the ladder and even overtaking Disc Priest, while Disc Priest declined from beginning of the season. So right now you get a lot more Holy Paladins on the ladder and you see a lot less Disc Priest on the ladder. So it does mean that something is going on the meta, and right now for me Holy Paladin is top of the list. Let's go further. We have MM. MM is going to stick at B+. B+ is not bad. B+ means that they're very close to the meta, but they are very stoppable. You should maybe not play Sniper Shot. A lot of people are still playing Sniper Shot, but you should not do that because an Aim Shot kind of does the same damage, but it also gives you a stack of Arcane Shots, which again, Arcane Shots is also going to do a lot of damage, and Aim Shot can also reset, or I think reset the Rapid Fire or reduce it. I don't even remember anymore, but anyways, Aim Shotting gives Rapid Fire, and Rapid Fire gives faster aim shots. So again, you want to play around that. Don't try to trap too much the healer. You could do that, but if you're focusing on it, it's very hard to do so. Try to scatter the off DPS, and you can actually just breathe a bit. But it's for sure harder than BM Hunter right now to climb. But I think B+ means that you can actually win versus a few specs above. For example, versus Frost Mage, you're going to kind of eat them. You're eating them alive. Destruction Warlocks, you're kind of good into it because you can also feign death whenever the Chaos Bolt is going to fly onto you. So again, you're going to reduce a lot of damage because of that, because it's very like predictable to see a Chaos Bolt running onto you. You have ways to win games. I just think it's not easy to do so, and that's why it is B+ right now. A Survival Hunter, I think it's also B+. I think it's highly dependent on the user, and I do feel like they have the damage, they do good, but they are very killable. They're easier to kill in my opinion than MM or BM, but Survival Hunter has more damage like on demand, I would say. I do like Survival Hunter. I do feel like they're very strong in the right hands. They have great CC and also a lot easier to do so with a harpoon into a trap, or you don't really have to spend every single time a stun. But yeah, I mean, they're very killable. Paladin, a Retribution Paladin, is quite good. I think the issue with Retribution Paladin right now is they are kind of cocked by Holy Paladin. The truth is, whenever Holy Paladin gets a bit better into the meta, Retribution Paladin is a bit like worse, because again, having Holy Paladin in your team, you kind of rely on their bobs, or you rely on a lay of hands. For example, if the Holy Paladin decides to lay on hands you while you still have bubble, it's terrible. You're going to lose. Or if you as a Retribution Paladin try to lay on hands because you cannot wait on a bob from the Holy Paladin, and then he's not going to be able to heal because he wants to bob you, then again, you're screwed. So I think forbearance is a huge issue. I think they should maybe remove it, or at least reduce the CD on it. I think not remove it, because again, you don't want to have Divine Shield and then bob. But maybe if you have a Paladin on your team, you have like a passive where forbearance is reduced by 15 seconds or something like that. I think that could be something good. But I think right now it's difficult for Retribution Paladin to exist in those matches. But overall, I still think like Retribution Paladin is one of the best healer killers. If you say to your off DPS, look, I'm going to go healer every single time. I'm going to hush them. They're going to get screwed at one point, and you're going to win the match. They're going to follow you, and you can maybe win games because of that. But again, if you're not going for healer, hush is very hard to do if you're not like if you're the kill target, because you're going to get stopped on your way to the healer. But I feel like, again, if you're playing around with your cards, you can do pretty well. Arms Warrior, I think it's because of the meta, but I do feel like they get better right now because of the other specs being somewhat not countered, but I would say they are used to play with Arms Warrior right now. I think I've changed my mind on Arms Warrior because of the idea of, look, you have matchups where you could do nothing, but you have also matchups where, because of your teammates and because of like the variety and the flexibility that the Arms Warrior can give, it can actually make you win a lot of games. I'm going to put them at A tier, but I do feel like they're very close to the B plus. It just is because I think Bladestorm, like having double Bladestorm on a few of those versus a few of those specs, kind of give Arms Warriors the liberty that they need. They have a lot of damage. I do feel like often whenever you're playing Arms Warrior, the issue is your teammates are dying, not really you. You have a lot of sustain, you have CC, you can actually do well. I think you are kited very, very badly though. Depending on who you're facing. Again, if you're facing a demonology warlock or a boomy, it's quite easy. But if you're facing a frost mage, for example, or an elemental shaman or devastation evoker, it becomes very hard directly from the get-go. Or arcane mage, like those are like terrible classes to play against. But I'm going to put them at A tier right now. Mistweavers. Now, that is the question. Do I put them on the same level as Disc Priest, or Disc Priest at the same level as monks? I'm going to put them at the same level. I'm going to put Disc Priest and Mistweavers together because I do feel like they are very similar in how they are perceived in the meta. Mistweavers has crazy healing, but they do get very quickly. Fistweavers, they are very strong, but I think, again, if people know how to play against one, it becomes way harder for them to win. You just have to, I say just, but it's not easy, but if you kite a Fistweaver, their healing is already going lower from the get-go. So you have to play around that, play around the kiting that you have, CC them, trying to root them, they will dispel, they will anti-root themselves, then try to knock them, try to stun them, micro CC them, and you can often just win the game because of that. The issue is they have a lot of like great CDs that are very low like durations, like they come back way too fast. But I do feel like they're A tier. I do feel like Disc Priest as well, so I'm going to put them together. Disc Priest, I feel like they do a little bit less damage. It does feel like people know how to play against one now. Again, if you're relying on ultimate penitence to win the game or to save the game, people know that now. They just like CC you or interrupt you or worse, just knock you away from it. You have a lot of like reliance on people not knowing your kit. If you have to use your pain suppression very quickly, they just switch onto you and then they switch back. Again, they can also get so for me, A tier, I think it's quite fair. They can win versus the better healers, but I do feel like they are counterable right now. Frost Mage, I think I'm going to keep them at A tier. I think they are better in Social Fallen 3s though. Elemental Shaman, I feel like I'm going to put them higher. They are strong, they do crazy damage all the time. They have some CC potential with Nox. Elite Shield and Thunderstorm is still very strong together. You can always make a warrior not play the game by knocking them 2 times and then root them off. They have to Bladestorm, for example. While they're Bladestorming, you can actually just static field totem them away. So you have ways to win versus a few specs that are normally harder for you, The issue is rogues. Rogues can just win games versus you pretty quickly and pretty fairly as well. A subtlety rogue, they stun you to death, and you're going to expend a lot of CDs, and the next go you're going to be the victim. But I feel like they're the only spec that holding them back. I feel like unholy decays as well because of their ability to ignore completely static field totem. And THs, they are also very annoying, but I feel like, again, it depends on the lobby and who you're facing, with who you're facing, and which healers you have. I feel like Holy Paladin with Elemental Shaman makes a lot of those issues like non-existent because of a mob. So again, the good thing is about Elemental Shaman is if you're trained often enough, your damage is not going to suffer. Your damage is going to suffer whenever people dispel your flame shocks, but you kind of see what's happening, and you can always play around a certain build where you're not playing around the flame shocks and lava bursts. But it's tough because again you have to cost a lot. So we'll have to see. For now, for me it's S tier, but the lower part, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Elemental Shaman, they don't really suffer too much whenever they are kited. Or I mean focused. At least whenever I'm playing Elemental Shaman, it feels like that. Outlaw Rogue. So Outlaw Rogue is for me still A tier. They are hard to pull off. It's not likely you're going to have a great time on it at the start. It needs commitment. I do feel like it is still RNG. You roll the bones. If you're not lucky, you can actually have a terrible time. If you're very lucky, it feels like very smooth to play. But right now, I'm going to put them at A tier. Assassination Rogue, since Holy Paladin are more meta right now, and Devastation Evokers also meta right now, it feels like they're going to drop to B+. I'm going to explain why. Deathmark is useless versus Evokers, and Holy Paladins, they can just pop it off. You have a lot of difficulties versus specific specs, and Holy Paladin being more popular, which in my eyes they are very popular these days, makes Assassination Rogue just worse than Outlaw Rogue right now. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that you cannot climb with it. It feels like you cannot really win the game off a Deathmark. You have to play around Kingsbane, which, to be honest, if you see it coming, it's way easier to deal with it. Again, Bob is so strong, so I'm going to put them at B+. You have too many Holy Paladins and Retribution Paladins on the ladder to actually do well versus them. But you can still win games, but I do feel like just drop from meta to close to meta, pretty much. Arcane Mage, I think I'm going to keep them at A tier, still very strong. Kiting, it's very hard to pull off, but once you understand how the damage is, you can do well. I think Foresight is helping them immensely, does a lot of damage for them. Yeah, I think they deserve the A tier. Windwalker, I think Windwalker is actually sleeper, man. I think the whole reason why Holy Paladin is now more popular is because of them. Windwalkers being so strong in their goes, being so scary that you kind of need a Bob to survive. I'm going to put them at S+. I feel like people are going to be mad about it, but I do feel like they're very strong. They are countering a lot of specs. They are very tanky actually versus casters. Dispel Magic, Dampen Harm, Touch of Karma. All of these, okay, are subpar defensives, but the amount of defenses you have with also Fortitude, Brute Fortitude, they are actually very sturdy. But also critting for 250k, critting for 200k, doing a whirling dragon punch or whatever it's called for 150k. All these abilities are adding up, and it feels like you are on an onslaught every single time. You're not really relying on Serenity anymore to win games. You can pretty much win games easier with Serenity, but I do feel like, look, if you can actually play around your strength and you have some uptime and you play not really like a warrior, but more of a combination between a subtlety rogue and a warrior, you can win games because of your ability to kite and to go back into the fray at your own leisure. You have insane stun CC, you have paralyze, which is a great CC as well. You can make people like trinket very fast as a windwalker. I think it's very strong, and it kind of eats demon hunters alive. DKs, they are also breakfast for windwalkers because again, They don't really have great mitigation versus physical damage dealers. Windwalkers is really strong. Don't sleep on it. Devastation Evoker, because I already talked about Elemental Shaman. I think I'm going to put them still on S tier. I play Devastation. I feel it's very strong. It is currently like really not a sleeper spec, because people are not playing it because of the obvious things that are being an evoker and not seeing your transmog, for example, is not really fun. I'm going to say, if I really care about my transmog too much, I would not play evoker, because it feels dumb to have that. But I do feel like, again, outside of the clunkiness, to not have hover, once you play a lot of Devastation Evoker, it feels like very smooth to play, and it feels like you have damage all the time, and your dragon range just helps you to maintain that damage, but the damage even outside of dragon range is still very high. So I do feel like right now Devastation Evoker deserves the S tier. Subtlety Rogue, I'm going to do them top of S tier. It's very strong, but I feel like, again, it's not everyone is Naj, not everyone is Calvish, so for me it's going to be a S tier spec, because it is strong. It can not die realistically. If you're not vanishing for stupid things, you're not going to die. But I do feel like you kind of rely on your teammates to not use their stuns, and people sometimes use stuns for no reason, and that kind of actually loses your games. Holy Paladin is actually a counter for Subtlety Rogue as well, if you're doing it correctly. You cannot really kill a Holy Paladin if they are respecting your damage. He can just bop it themselves in the sheep shot, for example. So yeah, I think the good counter for a Subtlety Rogue against the Holy Paladin is Shadowy Duel makes it very hard to heal, like, because you can AoE heal as a Shaman with a healing tide, for example, or with resto druids with tranquility or whatever, but or with the hots running on the target. But Holy Paladin doesn't really have that, so again, that's also a counter, but I think right now it deserves that spot. Devastation Evoker, Destruction Warlock, excuse me. I'm going to put them at second S tier. I do feel like the reason they are not S plus is because I think Demonology Warlock is currently better. They have better CC, but Destruction Warlock has crazy matchups. I feel like you have no bad matchups. I think you have insane CC, triple school, very hard to stop a Destruction Warlock. They have some mobility, they have defensives. They are not always as sturdy, but again, if you play around your TPs and your portals, you can actually just avoid a lot of damage, which is also a mitigation by themselves. Very strong spec with a lot of instance, and the triple rift can just decimate someone. Resto Druid, I'm going to put them at S+. I think it's the best healer. It's very hard to say no to a Resto Druid, I would say. They are just the best healer right now. Even though they nerfed the mastery, it still is up and running, so they kind of need to nerf Grove Gardens pretty much. I think that's the issue, but they are going to nerf everything else but Grove Gardens, and at one point they're going to nerf Grove Gardens and they're going to drop into the tier list. But right now, yeah, I think it's very hard to play against a druid that knows how to play. But you can win games. As a Holy Paladin, you can win versus Resto Druid. As a Mistweaver, you can win versus a Resto Druid. So again, you have ways to lose, but you feel like currently, if I have to bet between two healers, I would always bet for Resto Druid. Windwalker. I already said that. DH. Do I put them lower or not? Do I rate DKs and DH together or not? I'm going to keep it like that. I think the S plus is kept like that, like this. I do feel like Unholy DK is better than Demo. I think PM is better than Demo. I think DH is better than Demo. I do feel like Windwalker is better than Demo. And I do feel like Resto Druid is better than Demo. So this would be the list. Reason why Boomkin. If you rely on your Wood Beam, and you just go with your root beam, you can actually win games. And cyclones also, try to spam cyclones. If you get kicked, go back to bear form, cyclone again. Try to do your burst. Try to not play around starfall builds. That's a bait pretty much. If you play around Star Surge and try to play around your Star Surge goes, you can actually win games. But again, you have to not stick into bear form too long, because you still need to have some damage out, or you still need to cyclone a bit. But I do feel like Boomkin, maybe like this. Maybe like this. I feel like Boomkin, again, they're S+, but I don't think they're like top of the list. Because there are like a few specs that can counter Boomkins. But overall, the damage is really high, even though you're trained. So, Demon Hunter, very strong. BM Hunter, very strong. And TK, I would say, in my opinion, maybe the best spec in Soul Shuffle. Of course, this is interchangeable, depends on your taste, I would say, and your experience and your POV. If you're playing Shadow Priest or Affliction Warlock or Survival Hunt or whatever, you will have a different POV. But this is my list. I do feel like, again, I'm quite accurate. If you're seeing the ladder, and you have to look at the time. If you watched 2 weeks ago and you're watching right now, what has changed? Because again, if you're relying on pure numbers, yes, DHs are high onto the list, but is there any new DHs going into 2100 or plus, or is it still the same ones that are actually pushed since the beginning of the season? So you have to play around that and try to look around that, and then you will have a more accurate list. That's what I try to do, and also I try to explain every single change. Again, comment below what you think about the tier list. I'm a bit sick, so I'm sorry for the nasal speech, but I don't have any choice about that because I'm sick. But overall, hopefully you do agree with me. If you don't agree with me, please do send a message in the comments. I'll try to respond to you, but please try to also give a opinion or argument from your side, so I can actually know what's up and what you're thinking, instead of like saying, oh, Feral Druid B tier, ha ha ha. That's not enough. I cannot really know what you're thinking. I don't know the reasoning behind it. So just give your reasoning so we can have a discussion, because I am, I would say, a content creator that kind of responds my commentators quite often. So try to use it, try to have a conversation, and we can have fun. So again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Be sure to stay safe. We will catch each other probably very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.